So the Pope was sitting in his office in the Vatican. And when all of a sudden he heard a big commotion going on outside the window, he sent off one of his priests to go and find out what was going on. So the priest went out to check it out, and a few minutes later, the priest returns. "So what's happening out there?" asked the Pope. "Why are there helicopters in the air? Why are there reporters from CNN and Sky News and BBC all here?" "Well," the priest said, "I have some good news and I have some bad news." "Okay," says the Pope, "I would prefer to have the good news first." "Well," began the priest, "it seems that Jesus has returned." "What?" exclaimed the Pope. "That's not good news. That's fantastic news. That's amazing. That's the best possible news ever. What could possibly the bad news be?" "Well," the priest said hesitantly, "he's looking for 9 Jews because he needs a minion to say Kaddish." So the Kaddish, which we are going to recite together, it's part of the Yom Kippur service, an expression of still having faith in God when we feel broken inside. And it's more than that, it reflects the very essence of Yom Kippur. You may know the famous midrash about the broken tablets that Moshe smashed to the ground during the Golden Calf Uprising. After Moses angrily shatters the first set of tablets written by God containing the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, then God gave him a second set. And Moses placed both the broken pieces of the first set along with the second whole tablets into the Holy Ark. So the rabbis have understood the broken tablets as symbolic of human brokenness, the brokenness of our world, our own imperfections, and the potential for healing and holiness to emerge from our shattered experiences. Life often leaves us somewhat shattered. And at its core, Yom Kippur is a day for us to gather these broken fragments of our lives, bring them together. The pieces are all around us. The fragments of broken dreams, broken relationships, broken lives, the fragments of those who we were and who we wanted to become. So what do? On Yom Kippur, we gather all of these fragments together. We carry them as we try to live what will hopefully be a year of wholeness, blessing, and healing. Last summer, there was an interesting event that happened at the Hecht Museum in Haifa, which is one of the finest collections of archaeological specimens in the entire world. A family by the name of Geller, they were having a day at the museum when their 4-year-old child, Ariel, decided he wanted to take a look inside a big clay vase sitting on a pedestal. Ariel's parents took their eyes off of him for just a split second. Ariel was a curious boy, so he pulled ever so slightly on the ancient 3-foot jar, reached into it, and yes, you guessed it, it smashed into pieces on the museum floor. Some stores have a sign posted, "You broke it, you bought it." That doesn't quite work in a situation when the thing you've broken is a priceless artifact. A rare, fully intact Bronze Age artifact which predated the reigns of King Solomon, King David, and now was scattered in pieces on the museum floor. When I first read that story, the first thing I thought about was, his poor parents. Because this is pretty much every parent's nightmare, right? You take your kid to a museum and everything falls apart. I had my own lovely experience, also in Israel, but in Jerusalem. Miriam had just given birth to our first child. Miriam was born at Mount Scopus, Hadassah. And I was walking down the pathway from our apartment in the Veischachter down to the Shofar Sal grocery store, and didn't have a car, had a backpack, and I started putting things in the backpack, and I'm going through the store. And as I turned the corner in one of the aisles of Super Sal, something on the edge of my backpack pulls. There is this towering tower of wine bottles in boxes. And what did Jews do? They were pulling wine bottles out of the middle, so it was already unsteady. My knapsack just barely touches the side of one of those boxes, and the entire tower came crashing down in the Shofar Sal on Sderot Herzog. A sea of red wine started enveloping for aisles throughout the store. Security guards, managers started running towards me and yelling at me, what did I do? And, in my best Hebrew, told them, listen, that the tower wasn't stable. I don't know. I must have turned the corner and fell over. I don't know what happened. I have not walked back into that Shofar Sal since. I am pretty sure right at the front door there's a most wanted poster of me. Be alert from this guy, Mark Zimmerman, who Nezek. So anyway, the museum's response to this broken clay pot was actually amazing. They didn't punish the family or scold the toddler. Instead, they saw this unfortunate accident as a teachable moment to the public about how they restore ancient artifacts. The boy and his family were given a private tour to see the restoration, how they used the 3D technology. The jar was returned to the display, still without a glass barrier, because that is the philosophy of that museum. Nothing should come between you and those artifacts. So the more I thought about that whole episode, I realized that the broken vessel is an image that all of us can relate to today. Shattered lives, shattered dreams, even our shattered sense of security today. The broken vessel is very much an ancient Jewish motif. I meant this morning when I walked to shul, I forgot to do it, to take some old clay shards from Beit Guvrin, so you could see what these broken shards of ancient pottery look like, but many of you have seen them and probably have them in your house as well. So the idea of a broken vessel, that's an old symbol and a motif that we relate to all the time. In fact, that's one of the reasons we break a glass at a Jewish wedding. It's an image that's been with us for a long time. Even under the chuppah at our moment of greatest joy, we break the glass to show that the world is in disrepair, with the hope that this simcha brings us one step closer to Geula Shlema, to full redemption. Sadly, we don't have to look too far in this world today to see all the things that have been shattered and broken. So this Yom Kippur, once again, we all carry a collective feeling of brokenness. And if you've got a neshama, if you've got a Jewish heart, our hearts still ache for trauma of our people are experiencing in so many places around the world. And as we approach Yizkor, we also carry our own personal sorrows as well. Some of us here miss our mothers or fathers, husbands and wives, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, all these people we think about during Yizkor. The truth is that our lives and the lives we live out every day are in a dynamic tension between wholeness and brokenness. And that rings especially true for the Jewish people today. We're all more than a little broken by what we see in the world around us. Hostages still today, if you're keeping count, is the 725th day in captivity. And who can imagine what those that are still alive are going through? Hopefully the deal in the works will come to fruition. Doesn't look promising. And we still, the voices, I should also say, that have been clamoring and protesting for ceasefire, now that Israel has offered a ceasefire, they're suddenly quite silent about demanding the same ceasefire of Hamas that they were demanding of Israel. And we still feel the cries of families whose loved ones never got to live out their lives simply because they were Jews, the attack outside the embassy in Washington, D.C., attacks in Israel, France. I heard today in, Manchester, England, thank you, forgot. On Yom Kippur, perhaps more than any other time, we come to grips with the fragility of life and our own mortality. Part of that also means asking ourselves, what am I willing to die for? You know, there's a line from Hamilton that has always stood out for me. When Hamilton castigates Aaron Burr and says, "For once in your life, take a stand with pride. I don't understand how you stand to the side. If you stand for nothing, Burr, what will you fall for?" Well, we learned that answer from some remarkable young people recently. Recently, I read letters of fallen Israeli soldiers that they'd written to their families, just in case they didn't survive. That in itself is just amazing to me. And I've seen some even videos that people made right before they were going into battle. And to imagine that you're writing a farewell letter to your parents, not to open it unless they find out that you were killed in battle. So here's a letter by Sergeant First Class Ben Zussman, who was killed in Gaza at the age of 22. This is what he wrote. "I am writing you this note on my way to the base. If you're reading it, then something apparently happened to me. Since you know me well, no one is happier than I am at this moment. I was able to fulfill my dream even in battle. I am happy and grateful for the privilege I have of defending our beautiful land and the Jewish people. And if something does happen to me, I don't permit you to sink into sadness. I had the privilege of fulfilling my dream and my life's purpose, and you can be certain that I'm looking at you from above with an enormous smile. I imagine that I'll sit next to Grandpa and we can fill each other in on what changed from his war to my war. Maybe we'll even talk some politics, and I'll ask him what he thinks. But if, God forbid, you are sitting Shiva for me, turn it into a week with friends, family, a good time, and there should be food, meat." And here's one more from Sergeant Major Yosef Gitratz, 25 years old, also killed in battle in Gaza. Here's the letter he left behind to his parents. "Dear Mom and Dad, I love you so much. Everything is as it should be. I chose this. I lived a good, meaningful life, yet at the same time I was never afraid of death. I could have chosen to hide and not come here, but that would go against everything that I believe in and value, and who I consider myself to be. So I had no alternative, and I would make the same choice all over again and again. I made this choice myself, and I'll pursue it to the end. If I died honorably for my people, so be it. I have no regrets. I love you very much. I'm proud that you're my parents. You gave me a great deal. I had an interesting, full, happy, unique life, and my death only emphasizes that. I'm certain that you're feeling a great deal of pain, but you will overcome it. That's what I very much want. That's the main thing that I want. You both have many people close to you who will support you. Please find something positive in all of this. Be with the grandchildren, help Israel. I'm fine." What a letter. So many stories of remarkable young men and women, such tragedies that were endured, the Nova Festival, etc. How incredible for parents to read a letter that their son wrote to them and say that he's proud of them as parents. So it makes me wonder, what kind of letter would we write to our loved ones? What legacy would we want to leave? What kind of letter would our loved ones, God forbid, our children write to us at such a moment? Today on Yom Kippur, in memory of everything we've lost, everyone we've lost, and those we've lost in our own families. We pick up the broken pieces. Let's be proud of our kids, proud of our parents, our partners, our dear ones, and proud of the rich history and heritage which has been passed down to us. Out of the broken rubble of so many lives forever changed, also come some stories of inspiration and rebuilding. And here's one. Every weekend before that fateful day of October 7th, the Siegel family would gather around the table for one simple but cherished tradition: pancakes. Keith Siegel would make them with love, filling his home with warmth and sweetness. Then the unthinkable happened. On October 7th, Keith and his wife Aviva were kidnapped by Hamas terrorists from their home in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. I visited Kfar Aza. I saw that home. In an instant, pancakes and peaceful mornings were replaced by fear and starvation. Keith endured 484 days in Hamas captivity, where food was scarce and thoughts of pancakes was like a dream from another world. But now he's free. And he's not just eating pancakes again, he's actually serving them to everybody. At Keith Siegel's Pancake House, a pop-up in Sarona Market in Tel Aviv, he's reclaiming the tradition that was stolen from him. His signature recipe, which his daughter shared online while he was in captivity, used to be a quiet family tradition. Now it's become a symbol of resilience and hope. Keith said the following. He said, "In captivity, food was rare. I didn't allow myself to think about those pancakes. I was amazed when I came back and discovered that everybody in Israel was making my pancakes. It moved me deeply." The line to eat his pancakes actually stretches around the block now as people join Keith to celebrate life, to honor those who are still languishing in captivity. And this was never just about pancakes. It was a call to action, to healing, a tribute to the hostages who never made it out. Keith said these words. He said, "The Pancake House is not about food. It's about not giving up. It's about remembering. It's a message that no matter how dark the night, love and hope can rise again." And you can be sure that Linda and I will be at that Pancake House outside the Sarona Market a couple of weeks from now. So yes, that's who we are. After we cry, we pick ourselves up and we figure out how to survive, how to thrive. We mourn, but we don't mourn forever. In fact, the Talmud actually warns against too much perpetual mourning. Back when, after the temple was destroyed, many Jews decided that the temple was destroyed. So they stopped drinking wine and they stopped eating any meat because these were part of the temple service. But that never became the accepted way to live in Judaism. We had to pick up the pieces and we had to learn to live again. And not every grief that we all carry with us is tied to death and loss. Some of our deepest sorrows come from the lives we dreamed about but never got to live. Children who didn't grow up to be the people that we imagined or hoped that they might. Careers that never blossomed the way that we hoped. Relationships that faltered. Opportunities that slipped through our fingers. These are also losses. They're also things we grieve for, even if they're a little harder to name. So Yizkor is not only for those we loved and buried, but for the broken pieces of our own stories in life. Bringing these unspoken disappointments into sacred memory with honesty, with courage, and by doing that, we remind ourselves that resilience is not only about surviving tragedy, but also about learning to live with the gap between our hopes and our reality, and still choosing life nonetheless. And we still celebrate the blessings that we do get to enjoy, even though some things didn't work out the way we prayed and hoped. In her book, Sacred Therapy, the psychologist Estelle Frankel teaches this: if we find ways to pick up the broken pieces of shattered dreams, we can go on to recreate our lives out of the rubble. And then ultimately we become wiser and more complex human beings. The work of the soul is not just to notice what is shattered, but to gather up those shards and turn them into something new. That's the very essence of Yom Kippur. That's the essence of Yizkor. In our lives, that's the way it is. The whole and the broken lived side by side in every one of us. I read an article, another publication that keeps showing up in my Google News. It's called Veg Out. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but it's really good. And I read an article by Avery White in that publication. She did a survey and she asked 40 boomers what they regret most about their life. And the same three answers, she noticed, kept coming up. It's not the missed promotions or the lost chances that haunt us most. It was the silent moments of love and courage and doing that we never experienced. Almost everyone she spoke with brought it up in the same way. Some regretted working long hours while their kids were growing up. Others talked about friendships that they left drift away because they were too busy. Boomers confirmed this over and over again. A lot of boomers here. What they missed wasn't the stuff they wished they owned. It was the dinners that they skipped, the birthdays they phoned in, the simple conversations that didn't happen. And there was a second regret that surprised her in how consistently it showed up: fear. People didn't talk about being afraid of the dark or being afraid of spiders. They talked about being afraid to take chances. How many people I know who kept saying, I want to go with you on one of your Israel trips, over and over again, but fear kept holding them back. And I know many of you have gone and you can't understand that fear, but some people got fears. I'm going again in a few weeks. They missed out on priceless opportunities because of fear. Avery White wrote, the regrets people express circled back to the same truths. These three: people matter more than productivity. Fear is a thief if you let it run your life. And then health. Health is a long game, not something that you can fix in an instant. When you boil it down, these aren't really very flashy lessons. They're simple, almost obvious. But simple doesn't mean easy, and she thinks that's why regret exists. It shows us where we ignored what we knew deep down, and it offers us a second chance if we're willing to listen. So that's exactly what Yom Kippur is all about: to learn those lessons, to take those second chances while we can, because, as we all know, they're not there forever. So today we gather all of our memories together during Yizkor. We won't only weep for what is broken, we'll also honor what still is whole in our lives. The lives we remember, the stories we're going to tell, they're not just about loss, but they're about love, they're about courage, and they're about resilience. That's what shaped us. They instilled in us precious values, dreams, and blessings, and it's our job to try to carry those forward. Like Moses, who placed both the shattered tablets and the whole tablets together in the ark, Yizkor asks us to hold on to both of those things: the cracks in our lives and the completeness, the grief and the gratitude, side by side. And our task is to take all of it and build something new, to live a little more boldly, to love the people still with us a little more strongly, to create a Jewish future strong enough to hold both the joy and the sorrow of our people. Yizkor is a time of sorrow. There will be tears on Yizkor. But there should be joy as well in appreciating the wonderful lives that we got to share. And to remember in their memory, they would want us to live with gusto, and we must continue to do that. So may the memories we hold close today inspire us not only to remember, but to act, to rise from our grief determined to fill the world with more light, more compassion, more life. And in that way, the names that will whisper in our hearts for Yom Kippur Yizkor will live on, not only on our lips, but in the ways that we choose to live our lives from this time forward. Amen. We'll rise.